and Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake and Ryan Gosling. My daughter.
Christina Aguilera. So they're picked up with Schubert.
They do like the Mickey Mouse one, or they do like
They're just picked up.
like Zendaya.
They're like,
Put
they're
on your
two.
mic, please. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231 Public Law 1975, be advised that a notice for this meeting is made by posting of the Bulletin Board Town Hall and mailing to the officially designated newspapers a list of meeting dates annually, including that this meeting would take place at Town Hall 7 p.m. on Monday, December 18, 2023.
Ashley Abigor.
Here.
Chandra Harjani.
Here.
Gary Rosen.
Here.
Regina Truitt.
Here.
Joseph Caulfield.
Here.
Vice Chair Jessica Blatt.
Here.
Chair Craig Klingman.
Here. First up, we're going to approve minutes, November 20th, 2023, that were previously circulated. Any corrections or changes? Who's available?
Chandra, Gary, Regina, Priscilla, Jessica Craig.
Okay, so can I have a motion to accept those minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from 11/20/2023.
And a second?
I can second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Next up, we have a couple more memorializations. First one being calendar 395323. Mason and Illinois Allen at 85 Maple Street in Millburn. Any corrections or changes? Who's eligible to vote?
Eligible are Chandra, Gary, Regina, Jessica Craig.
Would someone like to make a motion in that case?
Move approval of calendar 3953.
A second.
Second.
Thank you.
Chandra Harjani.
Yeah.
Gary Rosen.
Yes.
Regina Truitt.
Yes.
Jessica Blatt.
Yes.
Craig Klingman.
Yes. Next up, we have calendar 395123. Night in Pandy at 25 Oval Road. And who do we have on that?
Same people.
Same crew. Any corrections or changes? Then can I have a motion?
Move to approve the memorialization for calendar number 3951-23.
Thank you. In a second.
I can second.
Thank you, Chandra.
Chandra Harjani.
Yes.
Gary Rosen.
Yes.
Regina Truitt.
Yes.
Jessica Blatt.
Yes.
Craig Klingman.
Yes. Couple announcements, or one in this case. Calendar 394623, that is Hongwei Hui 2 Winding Way Road in Short Hills. If you're here on that case this evening, it will not be heard. The matter is adjourned to 2024. The applicant will have to renotice, so that date is not in concrete yet. So keep an eye out on the website or any other postings at Town Hall for when that case may be heard.
And owners within 200 feet will receive a separate notice.
Correct. First up is calendar 393523, Christ Church in Short Hills, 66 Highland Avenue. And I will be recusing from this case. So Jessica is going to take over.
Yes, you will.
You swear or affirm the testimony about to give in tonight's hearing to be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I just need your names for the record.
Arnold Pinato, Peinado.
Bowie Snodgrass, BOWIE SNODGRASS.
And Richard Kelly.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Arnold Pinato. I am in here in my capacity as owner, as the application refers to it. I am the warden, senior warden of Christ Church in Short Hills. So what does that mean? The Christ Church in Short Hills on the lay side is run by a board of directors, which is called the vestry. And I'm a member of the vestry, and I'm actually the chairman of the vestry. I was the junior warden for 2 years. I'm now the senior warden. So I'm the chairman of the lay side of the church. We are here to seek variance relief in connection with the installation of a 12-foot by 12-foot by 11.25 feet high, open-sided wood pavilion that we would like to construct adjacent to the Christ Church Nursery School. So the Christ Church Nursery School is part of an educational complex that Christ Church has. It's across the fields. It's up high in the back behind the parish buildings. As you look at that collection of buildings, to the left is the Winston School, which we do not run, but we lease to the Winston School. That's a school for children with learning differences. And then we do run, however, center and right of that of the East Lane building is a Christ Church Nursery School. So this pavilion would be to provide the children for an opportunity to have an outdoor education there in the space adjacent to our building. As far as process, we've gone through the review by the Historic Preservation Commission and have received a certificate of appropriateness for what we're doing. This is an open-sided all-wood pavilion to be built on a concrete pad in our existing playground area. So the certificate, the HPC aspect of this process has been cleared. We're now to visit you all to present our case for a variance for relief on the construction of this pavilion. I'd like to introduce you also to the rector of Christ Church, Reverend Roy Snodgrass, who would like to give you a little context to our initiative. Sorry, just to say I'm also an attorney with Milbank Tweed in New York. I'm not the attorney listed in the application. That gentleman who's been with the church for a long time has moved to Florida as an attorney and also as chair of the vestry. I felt that I could discharge the attorney aspect of this application. Reverend Roy Snodgrass.
Hi, good evening. I'm the Reverend Bowie Snodgrass. I'm rector at Christ Church in Short Hills. I've been there for 7 years, and Christ Church started the nursery school in 1962. It serves about 150 kids. We have classes for 2s, 3s, 4s, and a 5+ class. The previous director was there for 16 years, Barbara Pepe, and one of the things she was proudest of was the development of an outdoor classroom. So we do have playgrounds with playground equipment behind the school, but this is on a corner, the corner of East Lane and Forest, and it's an outdoor classroom, and most specifically it's used for gardening class. Jean Fong, a longtime member of the community, teaches gardening to the kids either once or twice a week. And so during the pandemic, we used it quite a bit for music class, and it was used for other things also during the pandemic. We kept on putting up little canopies that were blown down. And so in the spring of 2022 at our gala, which is our largest fundraising event of the year, the Parents Association decided to raise money for this pavilion. We did not realize how complicated it would be, but they did raise all of the money in one evening for this pavilion. And the idea was to have a semi-permanent structure that the children could sit under when it was very sunny or when it was a little bit drizzly. It's used by one class at a time, and these classes are usually 8 to 14 children who are very young and very small, so they would fit into a small pavilion with 1 or 2 teachers. Also, there are signs saying that the playgrounds and the outdoor classroom are available to the public during non-school hours. So it's not it's a semi-private space.
Any questions?
Any
from the
questions?
You want to wait to open up for questions for these witnesses until all the witnesses are gone?
board? Is that okay?
That's
Yeah,
totally fine,
let's-
but you may want to, because these are fact witnesses, may want to open them up to any member of the public now for these 2 fact witnesses.
Okay, do we have anyone from the public who'd like to ask either of these witnesses questions? Okay. And could you just give your qualifications?
Good evening.
please?
Nice to see all board members again. I'm Rich Keller. I'm a licensed engineer and planner located here in Millburn. I've been licensed as an engineer since 1989 and as a planner since 1990. I hold a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering with a declared concentration in water resources and environmental engineering. And I also hold a Master's of Architecture with a concentration in urban planning and design, and that is from the New Jersey Institute of Technology, where I also taught for approximately 11 years, both graduate and undergraduate divisions. I have appeared before this board, the planning board, as well as about 110 boards for the state of New Jersey, and I have offered my services as a planning consultant to the Borough of Caldwell, and for 3 years I was the board engineer, planning board, and board of adjustment engineer for Long Hill Township. My licenses are still in good effect, and it's nice to see you all again. Okay, my credentials are accepted. I'm only going to refer to the materials that were presented today as part of your packet, so I don't think I need to mark this as an exhibit. You'll see in the upper left-hand corner, everybody has driven down Highland Avenue and seen the big playground that sits between the school facilities, where it's at the north side of the property, and the church, which occupies the south end of the property. The property is located, it's a 4.138 acre site, located with about 625 feet of frontage along Highland Avenue, about 675 feet of frontage along Forest Drive, and bounding to the north side of the property, paradoxically, is East Lane. East Lane is actually a private easement. They own, it's private right away, I think. And the private access easement, and Christ Church owns up to the midpoint of that road. So it's not completely isolated island, but it is a corner lot with frontage on two sides. It is located wholly within the R3 residential district and also within the Short Hills Park Historic District. As indicated, well, first of all, Christ Church actually has been in its current location since 1882, and I think the building gave that away. The nursery school was established in 1962. The existing use obviously predates zoning, and it does not meet all of the current conditions required for houses of worship or private schools, so it can't be considered a permitted use. Therefore, the placement of any structure on this property is considered an expansion of an existing non-conforming use, which is a D2 variance.
So, Rich, if you can just explain in terms of the variance relief that you need. So you're claiming that you need a D2 variance, 40.55D-7 to D2 for expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming use?
Correct.
And that's because the use that's on the property right now is not permitted in the zone currently?
It's not permitted. Does not meet the conditions of the conditional use.
And so in terms of the so-called expansion, I think it would be helpful right from the onset if you can explain to the board, and we heard some factual testimony, what is going on within that, whatever it is, 144 square feet, and what is being proposed?
Yep. That's where we're going to, is the center of the drawing. You see the overall site. You can see again the primary religious building, the school building to the north, and the detail is up at the corner of East Lane and Forest. And if we blow up into the center section, you'll see that there's a driveway that comes down, some parking spaces. In that area, immediately off the egress out of the school, the nursery school wing, is a walkway that comes out into a fenced area that is considered the outdoor school area, the outdoor classroom. The outdoor classroom has excellent proximity to the school, so it's easily controlled through fencing. It's not part of the playground with playground equipment, et cetera, and that is further to the south. But within that area, there's a relatively flat section in the stone right now that they have been using, as was indicated, sort of temporary tents like you'd see at a soccer game. They don't last, they don't weather well, and they tend to blow away. So there was a move during slightly inclement weather and as indicated under sunny conditions to have a structure that would cover that area so the kids could get out of the sun, out of the elements, and they can nestle in there. And I keep reminding myself, those 3, 4, and 5 years are little, so you can fit 14 of them in a 12 by 12 space. And so what we're planning on doing is in that level area, so we don't have to do any grading or walls. We're planning on putting that 12 by 12 concrete pad with a 12 by 12 wood structure, 11 1/4 feet high. It is wood with a shingle roof, and the that 144 square foot square foot area is located 34.82 feet from the street. Under our current setback ordinance, we don't have any other prevailing setbacks to judge ourselves from. We're actually, you don't use your own property, even though our existing church is only 13.46 feet. So under the old ordinance, 13.46 would be my required setback. Under the new ordinance, since we don't use our existing structures, the required setback is 40 feet, as is shown on the center. We're at 34.82. So that 5.18 foot deviation, where that about 65 square feet of that open pavilion tucks into that front yard setback, that requires variance relief.
Rich, let me interrupt you, just for the record. So between, I see you're showing the dimension of 34.82 feet.
Mhm.
What's going on between that front dimension to the street and the street itself?
Well, there's a, I guess I'll mark this as A1, so I'm gonna put some markings on it.
Okay, thank you.
So there is a fence area that runs along on top of a railroad tie retaining wall that comes around. There's fencing, comes across here. And so this is a fenced area. There's a, as indicated, there's a railroad tie retaining wall that holds up the area right in there. That is to the lower left or to the southeast corner of this of the stone play area. There's a planter area that's part of the outdoor gardening class space. It's all protected, so it sits within a fenced area. Keep in mind, it's really just 4 posts you see with a dark red roof over the top of it. So, but then between the fencing and the street, it just continues to drop. There is a swale that runs along the side of Forest Drive, and it's really just an area that's nestled in between the building and the stone swales that define the westerly edge of Northern Drive. I'm sorry, Forest Drive.
And do you need any relief with regard to East Lane?
East Lane is private, so it's not a public road. So we originally thought we did when we researched the deed work. Our deed actually runs to the center line of an access easement, and it is not owned by the municipality, and I went through engineering to confirm that.
Thank you.
So as indicated, we need those 2 variances, a D variance, a D2 variance for the, again, you put anything on that property and by case law, it's considered an expansion of an existing non-conforming use. So we're not really adding more students, we're not adding buildable area, but it is technically a D2 variance. And for that variance, you generally need to show that you meet the positive criteria, that you advance the purposes of the Land Use Act. I would point out that a school actually is an inherently beneficial use. So it presumptively meets the positive criteria under state case law. However, regardless of that, we still do advance some of the purposes of the Land Use Act in that we're providing for the safety of the outdoor classroom. We're providing an educational benefit which advances general welfare. So we're certainly advancing 2 of the purposes of land use. Regardless, it is serving an inherently beneficial use, so you really go to the negative criteria then. The negative criteria, and I'm not going to get into a SECA balancing test because I think it's very straightforward. I think we advance the purposes even without being inherently beneficial. So just to look quickly at the negative criteria, we see no detriment to the public good. The location, the size and materials of the proposed pavilion were approved by the HPC, and that is the body we look to in this community to protect the character of these historic neighborhoods. And really the goal of zoning is to protect the character of neighborhoods. So who better to judge that or help guide the community than HPC? And HPC decided this did not need to rise to the level of full hearing, and it was given a certificate of appropriateness. And so I think that there really is no negative impact in the community. Otherwise, our HPC would have modified it. I think there's no substantial detriment to the public good. I think that, again, the location, the size, and materials were approved. It's modest. It's open on 4 sides. The location is within an existing fenced play area, and that all goes to limit its visual impact. And it's also used fairly infrequently throughout the day. But I actually am one of those people who think kids activating a corner is good for our community, not a bad thing. So I think that even when it's active, it's a good thing. With regard to there's no substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the master plan and zoning ordinance. Again, our goal in the master plan is to protect the character of existing residential neighborhoods, to encourage appropriate land uses that promote the character of the township as a small suburb of the highest quality. Certainly having an educational facility, part of a nursery school embedded within the community in the R3 and Historic District advances those goals. And it certainly it helps to preserve the historic nature of this site, and it was deemed to be historically appropriate. So I think it also encourages the historic component of the master plan as well. I see really no detriment to either, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I think it's a good use, and we hope that you'll approve it.
Any questions from board members? You look like you want to go first.
Oh, okay, thank you, appreciate it. Is there any power going to this, Rich?
Nope.
And just, I mean, I'm just scaling it, it looks like it's about 55 feet from the curb line itself, right? It's just way back, that sidewalk.
Oh, yeah, from the curb line, there's a swale in there, so from the curb line, it does sit considerably further. It's probably about 52 to 55 feet.
Will there be any benches or chairs or anything in there?
They will move small chairs out there. They won't stay out there permanently, but they'll be moved in and out as needed. Sometimes they do sit, and sometimes the kids will sit on the ground. Sometimes they'll move throughout the playground. So there will be small furniture for small children that will migrate out there periodically. I don't think it'll be kept out there all year long. Obviously, when you get to the winter months, it would certainly be inside.
Okay, just one other question. How do you keep the children from migrating out into the road?
There's fences all around that
There's
site.
fences,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's completely fenced. Yeah, we looked at that pretty closely, and the fence posts are pretty significant. There's some parking there, but we felt it was a safe area for that. I met with the director to go over that.
Can you just describe the height and the type of the fence that surrounds the structure?
I don't recall, do you know the height of the structure?
Wooden fence, it's about waist high.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's,
It's a well, I don't want to say that.
I know.
4-foot fence, approximately wood, 4-foot fence.
it's approximately wood 4-foot fence. That's an existing fence in the front yard.
Do people park at those 6 parking spaces that are adjacent to the structure?
They do.
For the director and for the staff. So whoever's parked there arrives before school begins and then leaves after school ends. So there's not any traffic in those parking spots.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Any questions from the audience? Any comments from the audience? Okay. Board members, what do you think?
Let me just, I'm sorry,
sorry.
Jessica, let me just, no, nothing to apologize for. So before we begin deliberation, just to remind this board that this is what's called a D2 variance, it's an expansion of pre-existing non-conforming use. And because it's a form of D variance, it requires 5 affirmative votes from the board. And in terms of the positive criteria, you heard from Mr. Keller talking about the fact that a school is inherently beneficial use, and as a result of that, automatically meets the positive criteria. We also look for pre-existing non-conforming use in terms of the positive criteria is, is there something that's being done to kind of improve what's going on in the property, if at all? So you can take that into consideration as well. And in terms of the negative criteria, it's, again, 2-pronged substantial detriment to the public and whether there's any substantial impairment to the zone plan and the zoning ordinance. And as part of your consideration, there is a call out in the application materials as to accessory setback on a corner lot where 40 feet is required and 34.8 feet is proposed. Thank you.
Well, from my perspective, I think the applicant has shown, has met the requirements for the variance, and I have no objection to the variance.
I agree. I don't have anything to add to that. But I'd support the application.
I think it's a tasteful addition. There's nobody here from the neighborhood who is saying that they would be upset with that. It looks like it's going to be put to good use and is a safe way to meet their need and aesthetically pleasing.
There doesn't seem to be any detriment to the public, so I would be for it as well.
And I'd agree with all of those comments. I mean, you know, it's absolutely an inherently beneficial use. And there's no detriment to the public good. It's small, it blends in, HPC approved of it, and I think it'll be a really nice addition to the neighborhood, so I'm being favor too. Would someone like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the application.
Give a second?
I'll second.
Ashley Abington,
Yes.
Sandra Hargani,
Yes.
Gary Rosen,
Yes.
Regina Truitt,
Yes.
Joseph Caulfield,
Yes.
Jessica Black.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Justin, just wait, so it's no.
There we go.
Plans.
Yeah.
By the way,
It is.
I heard today that we moved out of the charge. Nursery. It was really fun.
All right, next up, the calendar 394923, Sally Latkar and Starth Joshi, 46 Farbrook Drive. Good evening again.
Were they sworn before?
Yeah, they were previously sworn, so you're previously sworn, and, was that right? Yeah, we heard testimony on this.
We
This
did.
is, yeah. another
Because
one.
Ashley was not at this meeting,
I think,
and Joe Caulfield
I was not.
at this meeting.
I had Craig, Jessica, Regina, Chandru, Priscilla, and Gary.
And Priscilla's not here
Right,
tonight. So we have Chandru, Gary, Regina, Jessica, Craig. We have five.
Good deal.
It's just the.
it's just, yeah, it's just six.
It's a
see there.
So, you know,
We need three.
you need three out of five. You good with that?
Yes.
Okay. You've already been qualified, so whoever wants to go first. Right.
Let's start with you.
So we definitely heard what was discussed last time. The board had presented and all the comments and the feedback. So we went to the drawing board, we cut back on what our request was to substantially smaller disturbance. And Tim obviously will describe all the details, but what I wanted to outlay was like, first of all, we are definitely saving, like one of the big trees was a concern, but not even that, like we are saving more than half of the trees. I think it was 14 last time, so now we are only cutting 6 in this current plan. But at the same time, we are only disturbing, if at all, on the variance, like we have shown the color grading also, which is the steepest, which is the orange, and we are not even touching that. We are just touching something that gives us somewhat of a backyard. One of the board members had the concern of that the retaining walls were much higher. So what we have redesigned is the retaining walls are less than 2.5 feet across the board, except for maybe one spot where it is 3 feet. And basically, we have just reduced that footprint, which gives us some backyard, but at the same time, try to address all concerns from board members about how large that variance was and so on. And I think Tim will take over from here for the technicals.
So I'd like to,
Mr. Klesser, you remain sworn.
yes, I'd like to submit this, I guess, as an exhibit because I colored it. Okay.
Okay, so is this different from
It's,
what is been submitted to the board dated December 7th?
it's exactly the same,
Okay.
except that I colored in the 14 trees.
Okay, so let's mark it. Hold on, let's double check. So I think we're up to A3. Does that sound right?
Oh, I don't know.
That puts a lot of pressure on me. Which you don't like, but I'm willing to undertake that pressure. So let's mark it A3.
Okay.
Tim, why don't you identify what you just marked as A3?
It's the, A3 is the site plan for 46 Barbrook Drive, dated 12/7/23, revised for this meeting tonight. And the only difference between what you have in front of you and what I have here is that, or the exhibit is that I colored in the 14 trees that we added, just to give you a better idea of what was going on.
When you say that the trees are colored in, are those trees that are newly proposed?
Yes, they're the proposed trees. 14.
Thank you.
And just to rest your mind a moment, Mr. Simon, yes, this is A3.
Of course.
Double check.
We knew that. We knew that.
Heavy sigh.
I'd also like to distribute, if I could, a revised letter. Because after I wrote the letter that you have in front of you, we reduced it a little bit further. And I'd like to, the reductions are actually correctly indicated on this drawing, but my cover letter is incorrect.
All right, so why don't you have copies of the
Yes.
revised, is the revised letter still dated December 6th, or did you date it?
It's dated December 11th.
So we're gonna mark that, Mr. Plessy, is A4.
Okay. I guess while this stuff's passing around, I'll say I used this as an opportunity this last month to try to discover a little bit of what this steep slope ordinance is all about. Okay, and a long discussion with a couple of people at the state level, and also talked with Martha Callahan, who's our town engineer. And I guess I would summarize this by saying that the concept of the steep slope ordinance was probably really entitled to be in the highlands up in northern New Jersey. But the idea is to preserve the visual character of the slopes as you're kind of walking or driving around, let's say. In Short Hills, the best way to relate it to us is as you're driving around, or maybe from a neighbor's property to your property, to try to retain this kind of this modified or molded landscape environment to the largest extent possible, and to allow some sort of development to occur in that area, but to retain the visual character of the neighborhood. It's not too dissimilar from some of the wordage that's written in our tree ordinance, which talks about preventing clear cutting and destroying the ground itself, and turning the ground, and then creating a lot of erosion, and stopping the water from being able to generate back into the aquifilter. So really, with talking with Martha, we ended up that the way to, well, if we were to say that it makes some sense to put a backyard onto this site that's somewhat level, so you could sort of have grass, which is a stabilizing element in terms of this residual geologic overburden, this dirt, really, that's all we're trying to do is hold it back. Then it would make sense to put our flat area probably in the middle and leave the perimeter so that the perimeter is maintained for the views of the adjacent neighborhood, right? It doesn't really apply to us from the street in this case, because the street is way up here and you can't really see anything from the street. But if we talk about these neighbors, we would talk about how we want to retain this visual character. In other words, don't build a 20-foot high wall here and plane this site, right? So what we have done is we took where we were, let's say, back further into the rear yard and where the wall was continuous before. And we've now dropped our wall and we built it and we brought it back to this point, and then we can actually let our grade naturally go out into the existing undisturbed steep slope. And then when we come here and we get in the case where we have a higher steep slope, or where we want to build a higher retaining wall, because this area isn't actually steep slope, it was previously modified, right? This area also was all previously modified with the house that was here before our house actually came in. This area in the back probably wasn't previously modified. That's kind of the area that we're talking about that we should be looking at retaining. So what we've done is we've left all our area in the back and we've added these 3 shades of color. And we did that to sort of give the board a sense of what the slopes were, because there's sort of a concept here that the steeper slopes are sort of better than the less steep slopes. I guess I'm going to say that some towns, and actually we had an ordinance at one time that allowed disturbances on different amounts of disturbances for different levels of steep slopes. And then that was later canceled. I'm going to say, I think it was about 8 years ago when this new ordinance came in. But we've left all of our steep slopes all around the perimeter here. And then we came in, we're asking really to disturb this area that I'm putting my finger around right now. The majority of it is, that sort of 20 to 25% slope. And there's a couple of little pieces in there that are between 25 and 30. This area, anybody could modify because it's actually already less than 20%. And there's this other thing about this ordinance that's a little confusing, that everybody gets to disturb 1,000 square feet of steep slope. If it's on a 6,000 square foot lot like Glenwood over by where my office is, or over by over by Southern Slope in Milburn, a 6,000 square foot lot, or it's a 29,000 square foot lot, like the R3 zone, sort of right by the Short Hills train station. All of these lots and towns are only able to disturb 1,000 square feet of steep slope. And that, it may make some sense that instead of disturbing just 1/6 of a lot area, like in Glenwood, that there should maybe be some gradient to how much steep slope you could modify. Under this, I don't want to get too far into that, but under this premise that we're retaining the steep slope look on the perimeter and actually building really a short wall. This wall, as we come to 0, comes up to 2 feet at this point, goes to nothing because we're walking out, then comes back, comes to 2 feet here, and then we brought this front wall at 2, we brought the back wall at 2, so that we could sort of get that gradient with a couple of walls and be able to plant in the middle here. All of that said, what we've done tonight is ask for a variance request for 1,334 square feet of disturbance, which is 6.4% of the lot area. And the disturbance is actually greater than the actual area that we're asking to maintain in the end, because the disturbance gets calculated to the other side of the wall and a couple of feet to work on the wall. So I'm going to say there's about 200 square feet or 250 square feet of disturbance that is actually being repaired and going to repair to the steep slope that it was previously before we did any of the work. And then the next problem that you would try to address with steep slope is how do we stop this erosion or control all of the, well, like last night is a good example with all the rain we had, all of this erosion factor because of the turning of the land and the exposing. And all of that is really done by limiting the construction silt barriers to contain it, and then restoration and ground cover so that the steep slope area can be restored. And then we can grass this area, which is approximately 29 by 50. So it's approximately about 1,450 square feet that we're asking for. It's narrower than this room and maybe 5 feet longer.
The deviation is 1,334 square feet, correct?
Yes. Because when I say that area, I have all of this, probably, I'm gonna say a quarter of it or a sixth of it that is not steep slope, so we're altering it, but we don't need permission to do it. So I confused that issue right there. You're 100% correct. We don't really, you don't need permission to disturb something that's not steep. So really, all I'm saying is that if you look at all of our neighbors or our impact on our neighborhood, we've visually retained the existing steep slope to all of the neighbors, and all we really did was level out an area with shallower steep slope so we could create some sort of a yard into this house.
Your testimony is basically that you're disturbing as little steep slope as possible to come up with a functional backyard, correct?
Yes. And I will say that even when I say now that it's about this wide by 50 feet long, it's things look smaller outside than they do inside. If anybody ever had an addition done on their house, when they dig the hole, it looks like nothing. When outside, this is a small area that the request is really for. And I think that's, I guess I just, no, that's really all. You know, you had a question about that large tree that was in the back. I think it was Regina, really, and we can leave it. It's no big deal. It was easy enough to modify this and to pull it back in and to control this a little bit. I think if there's any runoff onto the neighbors, it's probably true that the runoff would be improved by this, because as this area starts to level up, the water starts to sit here a little bit instead of just flying down the hill, which is part of that runoff. So we've actually helped this area. All of our stormwater work is still going to be in place as required. As we disturb this, we have to provide dry wells for it. We're water harvesting on this site. So we're going to take all of that water, harvest it, pump it back up, and use it to irrigate the lawn. And that's actually also good for the neighborhood in general. I think I went on enough.
So where'd the first 1,000 square feet go?
The first 1,000 is here to get the driveway to work. That's where, and the assumption on that was to get the driveway to be able to come in so that we could get the driveway in and then come to the board to, seek relief for the balance of it. I mean, it wasn't like it was,
Was thought given to design this home originally to not disturb all this land?
well, it's not that much disturbance. Like I said, the total disturbance is
We had 10% of the lot.
10% of the lot area. Right? It's
The home existed there prior.
the home did exist there, yes, but you would have to pull. The home would be pulled way in. Plus, we have to push the house deeper as we put in the new house. Kind of repaired from the new front yard setback ordinance that Rich was talking about in the last case, but we had to force this house back further into the lot, which kind of made the situation worse. The other driveway came around and came under.
But the house was a lot smaller, correct?
The house was definitely smaller, definitely. Yeah. It was a one-story house. Do you remember that house, or you never saw that?
I never saw it.
Yeah, they weren't here. Yeah.
So-
The house had already been torn down when they saw
Yeah,
it.
it was the plan by the previous owner, and one thing probably is, but Tim, you can suggest is that variance was probably also, like we were talking about last time, natural versus man-made. Some of this seemed like on this side was man-made because of the previous house, right?
Yeah, well, what they did is this previous house was smaller, they put the road in,
Yeah,
so they left it. Right? They didn't need the width. We needed the width.
Yeah, because you put a garage underneath,
Well, the garage was underneath,
you have it around back.
around back. It was almost worse. You came around back and came in. Narrower, the house was narrower. Ours is wider. This is probably, we picked up, that's 10 feet right there. We probably added 10 feet to the width of the house.
Any questions for the board?
Yeah, I visited the site last night when it was like dark and rainy, and then I went back today. Just sort of curious to see how it would manage with all that rain. And it was pretty impressively muddy, and I could appreciate the hills, and I could certainly see why you want to do this. But I was also alarmed by the house that's next to you is really much lower than you. And how do you prevent them from getting washed away? I mean, they didn't get washed away because they're still standing. But how do you manage the water with disturbing all of this land? That is my concern, the drainage, the effect of changing this to
Well,
part
they,
of your neighbor,
they,
particularly that neighbor that's much lower than you.
yeah, they don't really have they don't really have an issue at all. They were here last week or last month. They were here at the meeting, right? with
Yes,
us? Yeah,
but-
they were here.
but clearly, like, one thing I would say is like this additional ask to create that backyard versus what is already permitted, it's not adding to their problem by any means. We convinced them also last time. At the same time, this, as Tim was suggesting, it is probably retaining more water rather than letting it run off. So this is clearly like the previous, like.
See, I don't
the
know.
current-
If I may add, the existing house that was there before our house came in, it was at that height. It just did not look that stark because it was not that high.
Yeah, because the new house is
So-
much
It was
higher.
so-
It's not as high as
and-
that
But
house.
maybe we, in a sense, when we level this,
Yeah,
that probably actually helps this neighborhood.
like when
Right.
we created this driveway, it actually helps water not run
But
off. like-
I don't know, because they're not here. But that catch basin would pick the water up and takes the water back out,
So this is catch basin.
That would actually help the neighbor, really. Because all of this water, which I guess was coming down the driveway and going that way, is now all being caught, really.
And
They
in
are,
fact,
they are. And there's near the
Yeah.
bottom of the hill because the house is on this side of the street,
Yeah.
also higher. Yeah, right.
Yeah, they're low.
and in fact, their comment to us was because one of the trees they had to cut, which was right on the border, and we were thinking that it's our responsibility. It turned out it's theirs. They were mentioning that you guys should cut these trees before the storm because they're leaning on your house after they had done that. So in all fairness, even though we are cutting these trees, these essentially are leaning on the house, which we eventually would have to cut anyways. But we are being very fair. We are counting all those trees and replanting based on that, like.
But the
If I
river
take
verges
it-
are still on your property, so.
Yeah. But if I think about it, all this water on the driveway is now getting collected.
Okay,
It's actually probably a better situation for them.
so, I mean, it was so muddy today, who knows, it was like so much water.
There's a lot of water.
Everywhere.
There's a lot of water around
Insane.
town today.
But also it's getting,
There's a lot of clay.
it is getting constructed, these left, like
Yeah,
the
I
builder.
mean, it wasn't flooded, but yeah.
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 It's fine.
While on the trees, appreciate you guys are, putting in 14 trees, but you're taking out 5 or 6, right?
Yeah.
Well, what's the rationale for cutting the 3 trees which are away from the property? I understand the trees which are closer to the property to be removed, but the ones which are closer to this, the flat area that you want, the yellow, on the top left of the yellow, those
So-
3 trees, are they?
I think again, Tim probably will speak more to from what I little learned from the practicality of doing this. If you are going to build that retaining wall to do the grading, they will die anyways. So might as well be upfront, say that we cannot preserve that to make this and have a replanting. But
The grade is probably cut 1.5 feet, a foot, and maybe 6 inches there. Like the one on the right could probably stay. But these two are gonna be too exposed. That's the reason why
And they are not
they
that,
just took those 3 trees. This one is pretty much natural grade, the third one. So therefore it could stay, really.
And is this based on like some specialist who has actually requested that this be taken out once you kind of create the walls, that these will die, as was
Well,
suggested, or
these two
those two?
eventually will die. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. Because the roots are kind of high, and when you cut the grade, you expose it. You know, you're better off filling around a tree.
Right.
And sort of tunneling down to it. The third tree, we could probably actually stay. We could leave it probably, see if it makes it. It may make it.
we were
May
just
actually
being
make it.
upfront proactive,
Yeah.
saying that
That tree
there's a
may
very
make it,
likelihood.
It only one at a time.
Oops, sorry.
It may actually be helpful because it was sort of,
So what are we doing? Are we offering it up or what are we gonna do?
yeah, I'm fine with it because it would be nice, I think, because it would form a little barrier between this area and the start of the woods.
So in other words, the 12, is it the 12-inch tree to the north is being preserved?
Yes, yes.
John, do you have any other questions?
You define the area as 29 by 50. 50 is straight through, away from the house, right? And
I went 50 this
Oh, the width is 50?
The width is 50 and this is 29.
That's okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the audience regarding this application? Any comments from the audience regarding this application? Then I'll close the public portion. Board members, what are your thoughts?
Okay. I was impressed by how there really isn't a flat area for your backyard. Excuse me, really do something if you want to have a backyard, but it is a really big house that's really high. So you can't go back in time. You could have made it a smaller footprint and then you wouldn't have had to disturb so much, but here we are. So, and I do appreciate that you've taken some pains to disturb less property. And if you feel confident, and I'm sure the engineer will look at it to make sure that if we approve this, that the water will be manageable and won't impact the neighbors. So I'll wait to see what my colleagues say, but I'm leaning towards approving this.
So what's concerning me about these applications, we're seeing this more and more with new homes. When you build a home to like 10/10 the building envelope, this is exactly what happens. And, you know, that is bothersome because we're seeing it more and more and more coming in front of the zoning board now, new homes looking for seeking relief. And that's concerning because when you're starting with a blank slate, you could say, okay, we want a backyard, we want a pool, whatever the accessories that we want in the yard. Then look at the whole project as one unit and say, okay, well, how do we achieve all this? Now we're seeing, let's build the house to 10/10 and then come to zoning board and to try to get all the other stuff we want. And that's what's getting very concerning about this type of application. You know, we've taken the 1,000 square feet already to put a garage under the house. And now we're looking for another, you know, best part 1,400 square feet to build a backyard. And I don't think this type of development is actually sustainable. Not every house can come in front of us and say, okay, well, I'm gonna build the house out and now I want a flat backyard. So I also await my fellow board members, public portion's closed, hear what they think about this. And go ahead.
I'll go. I agree with and respect what you're saying, but I do think that we have to take, you know, the application on its own, and not be concerned about other applications, following it. So, I would say for this one that, you know, they have gone to lengths to reduce, the amount of disturbance that they're creating. They're keeping in that tree. And I know that this was a carried application, and if we could open it up to the public, I thought that they bought this house already it was already, I don't think that they were the ones who originally built it. I don't know
I don't think.
if we could open
Can
it
I
up.
have a
to-
motion of the public portion of the meeting?
Motion to open public.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good.
Did you design in this
No,
house?
so may actually, I wanted to exactly comment on that aspect is, we purchased it when these, like the plans were already there, and that was Mr. and Mrs. Berg who sold that to us. Of course, we are learning in this process as well. By the way, initially when that plans were showed to us by the real estate agent, there was a pool, there was, to be honest, there was a back patio here, which added to the impervious coverage and all that. We said, we don't want a pool, we rather would like trees. We were trying to preserve like more natural stuff here. We were working with what we had. We took out that covered porch, so it reduced the impervious coverage actually on the site. We put in just a deck, and we kept it as natural looking to the back. We want to plant trees, as my wife had also suggested. So we took whatever best we had, and they were initially, Tim, you would know this, where the pool was going and all that stuff. We were like, when we went to and talked to Tim after, when we had purchased the lot, it's like, no, we are trying to just keep this so that we have the permits in place. We want to start building because we have a school year coming up for our daughter next year. And we just wanted to progress with what we had, but also at the same time, like have some kind of a backyard at the end. And that's where we are looking for.
So for further clarification on Jessica's question, at what point was the development when you bought?
The plans were permitted, like it was sitting with the township. We had to pay to get them to start building. And that's what had happened.
So it was basically an empty lot when you bought it?
The previous house was taken out. We could see this part, which we have described from my visual sense, was
The
very
existing
steep.
drive.
Exactly. And now when we see it cleaned up by the builder, it seems it's better for the neighbors cleaned up. Like if you had seen it earlier when there was nothing, when it was sold, it was much messier in my recollection, because we were there last fall and we had closed it in December of 2022. We started building this year whenever we could finalize the rest of it. So like, I feel that they are better now. We have just talked to them also here and otherwise, and they didn't have any, like they didn't come and tell our work, like we'll build. Like they were, like they like it, like their tree was gone and all that, so.
Anything else we have?
No.
Done. Public portion. Sorry.
If you want me to, I can explain what the Bergs one had initially planned, but I don't know if it makes any difference at this
No,
point.
it was just
No,
a-
It's kind
It's
of,
just
yeah,
a side comment of something that I
yeah.
had heard from your original, from, the first, presentation. But anyway, so for all those reasons, I think I could support the application.
So I come out with you, Jessica. I think from, respecting what in terms of the applications we are seeing, keeping that in mind, but I think that they have a different starting point. And I think what we just heard is they've actually cut back on a lot of things were originally planned. And in the spirit of keeping it green and in the spirit of having a backyard for a growing family, I could be supportive of this application based on this.
Yeah, I agree with those comments. I think, it would have been nice to start over from the beginning and do this maybe slightly differently, but I think given where we are, I think it's hard to really have much of a usable backyard without doing some of this. And I think that, the applicant has made concessions and taken a number of steps to alleviate some of the harm that might otherwise have been done. So I would be supportive of the application.
Any further comment? Then, do I have a motion in this case?
I'll move to approve.
With the
With the-
tree
yeah.
remaining?
Mhm.
Do I have a second?
I could check.
Chandra Harjani,
Yes.
Gary Rosen,
Yes.
Regina Truitt,
Yes.
Jessica Glad,
Yes.
Craig Planer.
Yes, good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I appreciate it.
Stop fussing me.
All right, next up, we have calendar 39/50/23. This was carried from 11/20/23. Sharma at 29 Winding Way.
Thank you, Chairman Richard Skolnick. On behalf of the applicant, we have very brief testimony from the architect. We listened to the board. We scaled back the house a bit. We eliminated the FAR variance, so there's no D variance involved. Tonight, we also eliminated the building coverage variance. We're left with some front yard setback variances. We believe they're minor, modest, primarily driven by the location of the existing home and building up. I believe Mr. Lanzafama is on vacation, so we're blessed with Mr. Keller tonight for some brief testimony as well to just talk about the remaining variances and the rationale for that. So with that, I'll recall the architect, Keith Giannakopoulos. Sir, you understand you're still under oath?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and you still have your licenses?
Yes.
Haven't lost them in the last month?
Yep.
Okay, would you, for the record, correctly pronounce your last name?
Sure, Keith Giannakopoulos.
That was pretty close. Okay, this is an exact replica of what we submitted with our plan set.
That's correct.
Okay, you want to tell the board what you did in response to the comments and the changes that you made?
Sure. So at the original meeting, we heard the concerns of the board regarding the floor area ratio and building coverage, which were both over the limit. We revised the plans, scaled back the footprint of the house by bringing the rear wall in, which is actually the left side of the property, and revising the full porch to a portico. So the portico size decreased by 100 or so square feet. It was, excuse me there, Richard. It was 260, and now it's 78 square feet. So the floor area now is in compliance with the floor area ratio. We're actually 1 square foot under, and the building coverage is under by a good amount. So we're 1% under on the building coverage.
Better have a
now.
precise builder with that.
All the numbers are good.
There's margin for error there. Yeah.
Sure, the zoning officer will be tenacious in
Exactly.
making sure, assuming that we can find room for an approval tonight.
But those are the changes to the architectural plans. From the front, from the street, the main visual change that you see is the front porch revised to a portico. The height decreased by 3.5 inches, given that we brought that rear wall of the house in all the way across the back. So we picked up 1 foot all the way across the back, and that brought our square footage within compliance.
Okay, just to preview Mr. Keller's testimony, a portion of the garage on the left is in the setback area, the required setback, so we still need a front yard setback on the left side.
Correct.
Okay, you can just point that out on the drawing, so that's the garage. Okay, and then the portico itself would be in the front yard setback also.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's an open portico, no walls, just a sloped roof. And the roof is a shed roof to decrease the amount of area and massing that is perceived on the street, so.
Okay, and just to reiterate, which I think the board knows, you kept the front setback of the existing home, correct? You
That's
maintained
correct.
that,
So
really building
the home
up.
is built up from the existing front foundation and first floor and the existing right side foundation and first floor.
And those lines were kept, other than for the portico.
That's correct.
Okay, Chairman, that's what we have with this witness. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Keith here? Any of the audience have any questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, we have a handout. This is gonna be Exhibit A2. We're gonna call it setback exhibit with today's date.
Rick, do you want that first? No, I'll start with it.
Okay. Okay, that's Exhibit A2 for the record. Do we have enough there? So, Rich, you just want to pick up what I was talking about in terms of what we have here?
Yep. So as was indicated.
Yeah, with the swearing.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah.
Do you swear from testimony about to give in tonight's proceeding be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
In the name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Richard Keller, Keller.
Mr. Keller, you went over your credentials and prior application this evening. You were accepted by the board.
That is correct.
Of professional engineering and professional planning.
That's correct.
Please continue.
Just reviewed my emails. I saw nothing that took my license away, so I'm still good.
Tomorrow.
Not with your sense of humor, because that's my joke that I'm supposed to be using. You can't steal that joke. Okay, so I was trying to express with Keith that we have, it looks to be part of the garage is in the setback area.
Yeah, so this exhibit, A2, which is dated, setback exhibit dated September 18, 2023, prepared by myself this morning. What we wanted to show was, reiterated something about my partner stressed previously, that it's an irregular shaped lot. It's really irregular, this huge curve that comes around the street, and that you get an enormous amount of area that's technically in the front yard. So while we are an oversized lot, more than 6,000 square feet, 6,141 square feet of the lot, or 64% of the lot area is actually in the current front yard. So, and then we've got a location of a house which is not set all the way back, as ordinance permits in these days, but allows for a little bit of breathing room. So you have an existing house that's set at what feels like an appropriate location within the building envelope. I would point out that what's left of the building envelope, when you apply the 12-foot side yard setbacks on either side, and you apply the 2 front yard setbacks of 41.7 and 37 feet, you're left with an area, a buildable area, which is the sort of light beige tangerine color. That's actually about 2,078 square feet, which is about 22% of the lot, which is exactly what we're proposing on our building coverage. We're under a building coverage by 92 square feet. So we're coming in at 22%. Well, if you did a sort of a space age design and filled it right to the back property line, you could fit that same size property. So we're not overdeveloping it, but we're not tearing down and throwing existing house in the dumpster. We're building off of that. So when you do that, you're dealing with the hardship that's created by the existing dwelling. And then the architect has chosen the opportunity to push the garage back and get a 2-car garage. You can see that the amount of area that is in front of the required setback, if you nestle that in, is actually 125 square feet. So we need a variance for the 125 square feet of 2-story area that sneaks into the front yard setback. And then for the portico, as indicated, we went from a 43 by 6 foot portico down to a 13 by 6 portico, which is 78 square feet. Again, the portico has a couple columns on front. It's open air, allows for some visibility through. So it doesn't have the same kind of massing. And as indicated with the architecture, what we thought was kind of critical was that the area that does poke in, part of this front entrance here, the mudroom, part of the master closet, the principal closet that comes through, part of the office that come through, those really read as dormers on top of a 1-story building. So the mass that does penetrate into that required front yard setback is diminished in its scale. The house sets back, which is kind of a colonial sort of attitude where you would keep adding smaller and smaller additions, but one of the things it does is it modulates the mass, it breaks up the front plane, so the house starts to feel smaller and smaller. We don't need the FAR variance, but that's one way that you break down the mass, and certainly one way you break down the amount of mass that comes forward of the setback line into the front yard setback. I think that what was also critical to look at is that the red line indicates the existing setback. And I thought, if you look at the way the house is stepping back, for whether you're coming around Winding Way, going counterclockwise, or you're coming from the west and coming clockwise around the block, the existing house, as you're coming down the road, you draw a line parallel, the existing house is just about the same setback, a little further, but not much more than the porch. So as you're looking down the vista coming down, as you're heading to the east along Winding Way, or from right to left, is that as you see the corner of the building projecting, as you get closer and closer, you start to see that one-story portico. Again, porticos break down the mass and they're open air, so you start to see, but it's really it doesn't really progress any closer to the street than the existing corner of the house visually as you're coming down Winding Way. From the other way, as you're coming around, you see that one of the things that we did do is, because the footprint got smaller, besides eliminating the two variances, the front setbacks got a little smaller, as well as the setbacks to the side and rear, or the two sides. And so as you're coming around counterclockwise, you'll see that you pick up the one-story garage, and then the next one-story bump, and as you continue around, they all appear to have about the same setback as the primary setback, which is the existing house that we're going to jump over. So I think that, again, the massing of the house has really been carefully modulated to minimize the visual impact of that setback that violates the front yard. Corner lots are tough. You could say every block's got at least 4 of them, but most towns, generally, Summit, for instance, when they were developing the town, they require that corner lots be 20% larger because they recognize you have trouble fitting everything in. Some towns, South Orange, have a front and a side front. And the side front, you're allowed to be almost on the street, because they realize when you have 2 imposing front yards, it's difficult. What makes it more difficult and unique in terms of Short Hills of Millburn is that this big curving section, it doesn't come out and make a 90-degree bend. So I don't get to square off my house. I have this chamfered 6,141 square feet of front yard that really pushes back against it. And really, we're taking as a typical development from when this was done, where you honored one on front yard setbacks and maybe violated another, and you're really just extending that kind of thinking. So the massing of the house, the location, the stepping back, the one-story with the dormers, all help to mitigate and lessen any negative impact associated with that variance relief. So we think that, again, it's I think Mike, my partner, introduced it as a C1 variance last time, where the hardship was created by the location of the lawfully existing structure and the shape of the property. And I think that, I looking through Mike's notes, he talked about, the lot lines not being 90 degrees. To me, the most unique thing about the shape of the property is this big curving front that cuts into what you normally think would be a usable front yard. Again, if this was a squared off lot on the corner, I'd be compliant. I'd be much closer to being compliant. It's when you look at the buildable envelope, I think you really see the trouble you're against. So there are some elements of C2 here where it's a better plan to go with the variances rather than taking that house down and putting a same size house that is quirky and fits into that irregular setback. Then I'm closer to my neighbors, all for the sake of honoring a setback that I think is not really overly offended by the way the architecture has been developed and the layering, the massing, et cetera. I think that it's much better to keep distance away from the neighbors. We are removing that one section of the building in the back, which I think improves.
Where is that again, Rich?
It's up in the upper right-hand corner or the southwest corner of the property. We're removing a portion of it, which is closest to the rear yard for our house to the left. So we're actually pulling away from our neighbors, which is better for the backyard. And I think the mass mitigates the possibility of any negative impact in the front yard.
So we have some C2 really on the beautiful aesthetics here. Would you just put that up?
Yeah, I mean, look, I could certainly, if I wanted to build a very modern house that kind of filled out that envelope, I could get the same square footage, but it'd be goofy. But whereas when anytime you're adding to an existing house, you have existing structure, HVAC, et cetera, it always becomes more difficult. Where I think the architect was really was really sensitive in the way that house telescopes down as it gets towards the corner, and that, look, big porches are nice, but it's not a neighborhood with big porches. So I think that the portico is really a more appropriate solution for the neighborhood. And again, that is relatively open. You see through to the windows, you can see from the side, you look right through it. Again, they're open, they're diaphanous, they don't have as much impact as a solid part of the master. So I think
What does
that,
diaphanous mean?
a layering of space, where you can see through layers of space.
Okay, that's okay, I just want to know.
It was an SAT word for my son 20
Really?
years ago.
That stuff's been outlawed now, you can't go on
So, at any
vocabulary.
rate, so, but it,
They didn't teach me that at
It
Haverford
was actually-
College
it was
at the
actually-
University of Pennsylvania.
it was an architecture term anyway. So.
You guys done, ready to move on?
But yeah. So again, I think it meets the positive and the negative criteria for the variance, primarily under C1. I think there are some aspects of C2 where it's a better planning alternative. And we are creating an attractive home. We're allowing for this house to be brought up to the standards that are current for Short Hills buyers these days. It allows for the 2-car garage. I think it's an attractive project, and I think it really will have no negative impact on the neighborhood.
I think there's a reasonable balance here between the relief and the benefits of redoing a house and some
I think
architecture.
the net benefits clearly outweigh any detriments here. I don't see, again, you have an existing house that's already there. It's part of the landscape. Yes, we're adding a second story on it, but it's a very difficult lot to work with. And I think the architecture really was definitely handled to manage that.
Okay, and now we meet the lot coverage, building coverage, FAR. We meet almost all of the requirements.
And while we are only 1 square foot under on the building coverage, and I'll be building with micrometers out there, but it is 92 square feet less than on the building and 1 square foot less than the FAR. So we were able to get it. There is some breathing room on the building footprint, not necessarily on the FAR, but that is kind of the nature of these smaller lots that we develop these days.
Chairman, thank you for your time. I think we have we listened to you. We made some changes to eliminate those 2 major variances. Certainly it's a tricky lot, being on the corner. We think we've worked with it. It's going to be a major improvement to modernize this house. I think it's got a very nice aesthetic to it, and certainly the ability to approve based upon either the C1 criteria, given the existing structure and the unusual nature of the lot, or the C2 in terms of the benefits to the public outweighing any minor detriment.
Any questions from Mr. Keller?
If I could ask a question, so I was trying to figure out how this compared to the previous portico. It's now a portico versus the porch. Where was the previous porch? Because I'm
I
trying to
can
figure out.
show you that's the plan that you have
So I'm
before you. The plan that we had before, it was 6 foot and it ran the entire length of the house.
Oh, the entire length.
The
Do you have a like a rendering of it?
Yeah,
If you don't, it's okay. I probably have it in my packet.
We do it how I just layered it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Wait,
great.
let's just make sure. Rick, what are you picking out?
Rich has it. It was just the last version of the plans.
These were previously,
Yes.
So
Yeah.
what the architect has shown was the previous rendering was part of the first house.
Why don't you just call out the last revision? 6.5.
Issued for board submission 6/5/23. So this would have been part of your previous package, I believe.
Right.
And you can see that it does have a nice farmhouse kind of appeal, but it's really not Winding Way. I think that you see, this is really a much more appropriate reaction. And the benefit was we got rid of a lot of building coverage, not FAR, but building coverage. And I think it's more appropriate for the neighborhood.
Any other questions? Any questions from the audience regarding this application? Any comment? Then I'll close the public portion. Board members, what say you?
I think that this plan is definitely an improvement from what was originally in front of us. And I do think it satisfies either the C1 or C2 criteria. You know, it's definitely a tougher piece of property to work with. And I think that the architect did a good job of, scaling back and making this a home that is going to fit, be a little more in line with the character of the neighborhood. So I could support this revised application.
Good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I appreciate that you've taken the porch down, in terms of massing to the portico. I think it looks better and fits in the neighborhood better. It's a tall house for the neighborhood. Driving around, it's sort of neighborhood, quaint little houses and smaller lots. But this is a bigger lot, and I see you taking pains to reduce the impact. So I would support this application.
So to me, the first application was an application of wanting with no regard for the lot. This to me is asking for what you need and taking into consideration the idiosyncrasies of the lot. So I think it's a much better applied application. And frankly, actually, I do like the way it looks better than the long porch. Not to mention it'll give you a lot more light inside the house, which would be a lot nicer. So I would support this second go around for sure.
Steve.
Do I have a motion in this case?
I'll make a motion to approve the application.
I could second. Second, John?
Chandra Rajani,
Yes.
Gary Rosen,
Yes.
Regina Truitt.
Yes.
Jessica Glad.
Yes.
Yes. Good luck with that.
Thank you for your time. See you in the new year.
Thank you.
Figure that All right, next we'll be moving to calendar 39/18/23. This case was carried from 12/4/23, Yang Yao at 20 Claremont Drive.
Good evening.
Chandra cannot vote on this.
Okay.
Wait, you can't vote on it.
Okay, hold on a second. So this was originally heard on April 17th, 23, and then was carried to
June 5th.
June 5th.
There was no testimony then,
Go ahead.
and it was carried to October 16th. I don't believe we had testimony then as well.
Okay, yeah, I had it to
And then
August
12,
7th, and then what did you say, I'm sorry, October what?
October 16th,
Okay,
December 4th, and then today.
And December 4th, we heard no testimony based on a no-show, right?
Glad I wasn't here.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
we didn't have enough, I think
They went to.
We were waiting for John McDonough.
yeah, they're planted
It
in.
was no-show, right, right.
Yeah, yeah,
We have Matt Flynn here, who is from John's office.
Okay.
okay, so before we continue, I'm sorry.
I cannot vote on this one, because I haven't, I wasn't on April 17th.
He was not here on April 17th,
Okay,
and he did not tell us. Jessica did, so she's good.
okay.
You're free to go.
Thank you,
I'm
I
happy-
appreciate
happy
it.
holidays.
Happy holidays.
Or you can stay and hang out in the lobby.
Love to.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
For Jen, I would wait.
Yeah.
All right, thank you all.
Yeah, oh, wait, they're responsible.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hang on one second, we're just,
I just want to see, so we have not, at least according to my records, we haven't marked any exhibits yet with regard to this application.
You marked, well, I marked one, an A1.
You marked an A1 because I don't have a record of that.
It was pre-printed, but
Well, was it identical to something that you previously submitted? Just want to make sure we're.
There was nothing entered on the April meeting.
Actually, maybe.
So, Mr. Singer, let's, I just want to, just because it's had a little bit of history in terms of being carried. So the latest plan that I have, I just want to make sure the board has it. Architectural plans from your office, latest revision date is May 3rd of '23.
Yes, but we're submitting another plan tonight.
So this is all post May 3rd of '23.
This is all posed. First application was January 2nd.
Yeah, I mean, the plan I have is zoning review January 14, '23, zoning application February 16, '23, revised per hearing May 3rd, '23.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so you're gonna introduce tonight new plans.
Yes.
Which are.
December 15th.
December 15th.
And I have nothing's been entered. The only day we heard testimony was the April meeting. We heard nothing.
Right,
since
that's,
then.
I agree, yeah, that's what, so we don't, so this is gonna be A1 that we haven't seen yet.
That's a new one.
Yeah, so this has been circulated already.
But this is a new plan now.
Yes.
So we're marking as A1, new plans. So why don't you, first of all,
12/15/23.
all right,
Revision 3.
so these are,
Do you attach me on this thing? Do we even know what we're going for? Like, is it the same as it was?
It's close.
So this is a new architectural plan sheet,
Yes.
right?
Are we ready to go? Do you want to sign him in?
Well, yeah, we can swear him in, and get his credentials, but.
All right, so
But before we get to Mr. Flynn, and Mr. Singer, you consider yourself, you're still sworn
yes.
from the prior hearing. So why don't we start out, as Mr. Klettner appropriately stated, first of all, why don't you identify for us what relief the applicant is seeking?
The applicant is seeking the same height as side yard variance. And
Which is, what's the deviation?
Is that the 1.29 feet?
yes, it's now 1.8.
It's now 1.8,
Yes,
so that increased.
yep. And the floor area ratio went from 2012 to 2011.
Okay, wait.
That's-
No. Under attachment E, your deviation floor area ratio was 212 square feet.
Right,
And now what is it?
211. It's the same.
What about building coverage?
Building coverage at the time was based on an assembly use, accessory use that was attached to a house counting as building coverage. That's no longer the case. That was right after the
new ordinance.
the new ordinance came out.
Was there
It
some
was
confusion?
It was interpreted as what it said in the supplemental
Mhm.
zoning section was that if an accessory use was attached to a house or was 4 feet away from a house, up to 4 feet away from the house,
Right.
it counted as part of the house.
It was to be considered part of the principal structure for setback purposes. So they would have to meet the setback of the principal structure, not an accessory structure. So there was some confusion at the beginning. It was included in the building coverage initially and should not have been.
So do you need a building coverage variance now?
No.
Okay.
And you have FAR, you said?
We have FAR,
And how much is that again?
211.
211 feet.
And your front yard setback, the deviation last time, I believe, was 4.49 feet.
Now that's another zoning change that happened in the interim, where the front yard setback is now the average of 3 houses on either side instead of 40 feet.
Just the
So,
prevailing.
so that prevailing setback issue went away also.
Do you have that documentation though? Because I did not. Do you have the prevailing setback?
Of those 3 houses? No, but I have
What's that?
a diagram that within the scope of what we're talking about
Okay.
pretty clearly shows that,
So you don't need the front yard setback variance?
no.
So what we're left with is you've increased the side setback greater than 18 feet in height,
Mhm.
right, from 1.29 feet to 1.80 feet. And you kept the FAR the same,
Yes,
and because of the ordinance change, you eliminate building coverage variance and you eliminate front yard setback variance.
yes.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Do you want to?
Stand up, I'll swear you in, and we're all done.
Just raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm testimony about to give in tonight's hearing to be the truth?
I do.
Nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Your name for the record.
Matthew Flynn, FLYNN.
And your credentials for the board, please.
Yeah, my education comes from Rutgers. I have my master's degree in planning and public policy. I have my professional planner's license in the state of New Jersey, as well as my national licensure, which is the AICP license. I've testified before this board virtually and about 100 other boards across the state.
And your license is in good standing.
Yes.
Please proceed.
Okay, so the set of drawings that we submitted,
And by the way, before, and I neglected to mention, we have 6 eligible board members, and you understand that it's an FAR variance, so you need 5 affirmative votes.
yes,
So you don't have the full complement of 7 board members, and you still wish to proceed,
we
correct?
still wish to proceed.
Go ahead.
So the set of drawings that you most recently received.
You received them?
Yeah, you did, or you should have. They were,
What are the ones dated with 2 revisions?
third.
That's the last that I had.
so,
Wait, Mr. Singer, I'm sorry. Again, the reason why I painstakingly went through that is the last set of revisions that I believe the board has before them are dated May 3rd, 2023. You've now marked as A1, I believe, a new sheet that the board has not seen before
yes,
and has not been submitted to the board or to our lead.
this drawing was submitted to the board and I
What is the date on that? Because I'm telling. this is-
5/3/23.
Okay,
Oh,
so,
that's what I
okay, got it.
Okay,
Okay. So what I'm trying to point out is that we went through an effort of reducing the FAR. In this case, we took 2 feet off the back of the building, tried to adjust the interior to accommodate it. At the end of the day, we went from 212 to 81 square feet of variance needed. And the master bedroom ended up being 12 feet by 13 feet.
So you need 81 or 211? Are you going somewhere with this?
I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay.
So we tried to reduce the house as far as we could, and we discovered we reduced it substantially more than we could because it just didn't work at the reduced size. The master bedroom was 12 by 13. All the bathrooms were very tight. There was no family room, and there's still no family room on the ground floor. But we just didn't have that floor area to give up. During the meeting on the previous application,
How many bedrooms is the final product?
4. Starting with 4. And there are 4 kids in the family. What appeared to be the largest objection was the front dormer and the mass of the top of the building. And we took that to heart. We took a look at the street. The board was right. It was a reasonable comment. The Well, almost all the roofs run parallel to the street.
If you're gonna be submitting, so far we've marked, which you haven't referred to yet, or new architectural plan sheet dated December 15th, marked as A1. Looks
Right.
like you have some other.
I have some
exhibits,
others.
So why don't we, as you're referring to them, if you can just, for the benefit of the board and the public, just identify what they are. And so what is A2?
A2 is a photograph of the street from the
Did you
east
take
side.
it?
I took that
Okay, and approximately what?
3 weeks ago.
There's leaves on the trees 3 weeks ago. That's impressive.
It was late fall. It was before the last meeting. But
That narrows it down. Why don't we say, is it fair to say that a photo was taken in September of this year?
yes.
Okay.
So we looked at this more carefully. All the ridges are parallel to the street, with the exception of the immediate neighbor. What's outlined in white here is the house in question. Two things happen. One is this street sort of bellies out a little bit. And so do the houses. But when you get into the house in question, it's substantially lower than the rest. In fact, when I looked at the heights of all the houses on the street and the elevation, that's both the shortest house from a height standpoint, and it's got the shallowest roof slope. And I'm going to go to A3, which is a sheet of images, photographs.
Okay, so these are renderings?
2 renderings and, well, 4 renderings and 2 photographs.
Okay, 4 colored renderings and 2 photos. So let's talk about the photos first. Did you take those photos?
No, those are Google photos.
2 Google photos. Do you know approximately when those photos were from?
2 days ago,
Okay,
the
16th.
16th.
And the colored renderings you did yourself?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, these are the existing renderings. That's the actual house. And it, aside from being short, small, with a pretty diminutive roof, it's also, I mean, the roofs are about the same value as the walls. It's pretty bland. It's not doing anything for the character of the street. So what we did was try to make it match some of the other sort of elements in the street. So the front facade has a higher roof line like these, more of a base. We took the roof, pitched it up a little bit. That got the height of the building higher, and that's why the height to setback variance came in. We eliminated the large front dormer. We put in 2 smaller dormers just to be ornamental, and to mimic some of the other things going on the street. Those aren't necessary, really. And on the back, we took the pointed dormer, turned it into a shed dormer, which mitigated, or we think mitigated, most of the issues with the first one. So the main roof was originally 5 and 12, or is currently 5 and 12. Our proposal is to raise it to 7 and 12. The average on the street is 8 and 12. So we're trying to fit this in so that it matches, at least in scale and character, the rest of the street. We added overhangs in order to cast some shadows and make some interest, create some contrast between the roof and the walls, and eliminate the first set of dormers that were overbearing and not consistent with the rest of the street. To the rear, the rear dormer is now lower because it's no longer peaked. The square footage is down on the attic by 90 square feet. And that gets us to the variances. So the height to side yard, the house was built in 1946. The code change in 2005, which was known as the colloquially as the McMansion ordinance, added a height to setback on the side of the R6 districts and R5 districts. The house was in violation at the time that ordinance came into place. And as it got larger, so did the height to side yard variance. It was never cited to accommodate that because the citing didn't exist.
So on what side is it on?
It's on the right.
You're referring now to A1. It's marked for identification, dated December 15th.
Yes. So the height to side yard, the building got a little bit taller, so the height to side yard got a little bit worse. It's 30 feet instead of 28. The average on the street is 28.
28 feet.
28 feet. It's still 2 feet under the height limit. But that's a small little rectangle, that shape, until it hits the existing, or what was the existing roof. And that's the only bulk variance. The use variance, we had a 15-foot by 30-foot, by 15-foot by 12-foot master bedroom. When we cut the thing back, we ended up with 12 by 13, which was smaller than most, well, anything that would be called a master bedroom or a principal bedroom. And the other bedrooms were, on average, 144 square feet each, which would be roughly 12 by 12. So it's a modest house. There's no family room on the ground floor, which most houses have some of.
So let me ask you a question. You know, you have a conforming lot, 6,000 square feet.
Right.
Okay. And you're over by 211. That's not a foot off a bedroom. It's a lot more than that.
Well, the back is 20 feet, and that's 2 feet
20 by
off the
10.
20 feet, 20 by 10, yeah.
And then some, right?
So you take 2 feet off of, well, it's 11, and you get 9, and that's a pretty big percentage. But it's pretty tightly packed. I mean, this sort of works with the street. It's got consistent facades, it's got fenestration that matches the adjacent houses, it kind of works in there. The back, we're working with an existing plan, and to get it into any level of what one would expect, it's taking a little bit more. I mean, frankly, the other option is, and the new front setback law would end up allowing us to build to here. So then we could build up to the street, 2 stories with a roof. But that's not what we want to do. It's not good for the owner, not good for the town, not good for anybody.
Any other testimony?
Question?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Sure, let's go to questions.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith?
yeah, you have a question. I'll
Yeah,
go to the second.
you initially submitted a plan that was February 16th, 2023, right? You can see the revision based on your plan, A1. That was the original one with the big front dormer, big shed dormer in the front.
Yes.
Okay, then you submitted a revision, which was May 3rd, 23, which we have in our packets.
Right.
Okay, so then what you were saying is that May 3rd revision was the one with the small bedrooms, 12 by 12, 12 by 13 master bedroom.
Right.
Then you just switched it this week, December 15th, which is what this A1 is.
Yes.
Okay. The difference between the first plan you submitted in February and this plan seems to only be that instead of having a shed dormer in the front, you just have the 2 single dormers.
Yes.
So everything else is the same.
Yes.
So there was no family room initially
There was no family room
on
initially.
the first floor that you mentioned. Oh,
No.
and just because it seemed really confusing to me, the entry, what variances are we looking for?
Just height to site setback, setback above 18 feet, and the floor area ratio.
And what do we require and what are you proposing?
So on the, at the 30-foot level, the required variance, the required side yard is, it's easier here. 11.81 feet. That's the height, that's the setback at 30 feet.
So over 18 feet, you have to have an 11-foot setback?
So over 18, no, well, it goes back at 0.3 feet per foot.
So under attachment E that's in our file, we have, in terms of the side setback, maximum. So what's maximum allowed or permitted by ordinance of 11.39?
Yes, the house was 2 feet shorter.
And what's being proposed?
At 30 feet, which is the new proposed height of the roof,
Right.
it's 1.8 feet.
No, that's the variance.
That's the variance. Okay, the total is, well, that's the variance, but the setback itself is 11.81.
Just getting back to what my question of what variance you're looking for, the height, which I'm still trying to figure out. What's the next one?
Well, it's height to setback.
Height to
The
setback.
height is 30 feet, the allowable height is 32 feet.
Gotcha.
So we're under that.
Right.
There are only 2 variances.
Okay.
One is the height to setback, which is this diagonal line. It starts at 18 feet,
So it's gonna be just on that right side.
just on that right side. And the other one is the FAR,
Right.
which is
The 211.
amorphously spread, the 211 square feet.
211 square feet.
So, for Mr. Caulfield's purpose, because it is a little confusing when we do the height to side yard setback. So in this particular zone, the R6 zone has a required setback of 8 feet for the portion of the structure up to 18 feet in height. Once you get beyond that, for every foot above 18 feet but below the required 32, you have to be an additional 0.33 feet. So it's not the entire thing it's a small, I don't know if you can show them on the plan, it's a small,
So
so
there's.
at 19 feet, it has
see
to
this
be
triangle?
8.33. At 20 feet, it has to be 8.66.
Right, but so.
There's a triangle right
Wait, wait, wait.
What's the number?
So it-
So
at the,
this is.
Wait,
wait,
this
Mr.
is
Singer,
cutting
hold
through this
on.
part of the
Hold
house.
on.
Yeah,
Mr.
wait,
Singer,
That
wait,
triangle up there. And then this is what it would look like.
Mr. Singer,
Gotcha, okay.
I can hear you.
Sorry.
You have to repeat what you just said
Okay,
to the
So-
whole board.
okay. So the height to side yard setback is a diagonal plane that starts at 18 feet, at 8 feet from the property line, goes back diagonally 0.3 feet for every foot of height. So that plane, in this particular case, intersects the wall of the house here and creates a small triangle. And that triangle is the bulk of the variance.
what is it?
What is the required setback above 18 feet for your project?
It varies as you go up.
But at its,
But-
at the worst. what is
At the
it?
worst case, it's 12 feet, something like
Well,
that.
that's what it has to be at 32 feet.
At 32 feet, it's 12 feet.
Right, but you're not at that.
We're
You're
not,
at
we're not
You're at
that high.
12.8 feet.
We're somewhere on the spectrum.
You're at 12.8 feet at 26, correct?
Yes.
Or
28,
28, sorry.
yes.
That's
Actually,
what- that's what
30,
gets
30,
you.
Aren't
30.
we 13.8
What?
now?
13.8, what's
Sorry,
that?
13.8.
What?
13.8, you're right.
Yeah,
So you, because you're at 12 feet at, or you're 11 feet at 18 feet, correct?
You're at 11 feet at 18, no, you're at 8 feet at 11 feet.
No, I'm sorry,
Oh,
18
that-
feet, at 18 feet,
Yeah,
you're at 11 right now, correct?
at 18 feet, we are at 11.1, I think.
Okay.
What's the size?
That conforms.
He's at 10.10
10.2.
at 18 feet.
Right.
So you don't conform at 18 feet currently?
We
He
do conform.
conforms at 18 feet, it's the above 18 feet. At
That's
the
it,
worst case, he's at 10. He's at,
6 feet below, so 24 feet is where it starts non-conforming.
Because it starts not to conform at 24 feet.
Right.
And then from
Goes
your
from-
24
so it
to your
starts at
28,
Yeah,
that's where you have the 1.8 foot deviation then.
right.
To 30 though, right?
Well, no,
It's
because
only
the house
30
doesn't,
feet.
the house is 30 feet high.
Right.
The house is 30 feet high.
So it's 30 feet, right, okay.
Yeah.
So at 30 feet, you're at 1.8. At
Yeah, at the 29 feet,
Si-
you're at
at 16
one-
feet, you're at
1.6.
0.
Yeah. Or
And
1.5,
and then the area, the width of that is 18 feet at 16 feet. 16.
Just a few questions. Thanks for all this. So with version control, I'm a little confused. And also, I'm not sure that I ever received the latest, so I'm.
You didn't, that hasn't,
Okay,
that's.
I'm looking
this is-
online, and the variances that are online, there's 4 of them. That's what's online right now.
So the 4 of them, well, yeah, when we started discussing this, the first 2, one was the building coverage, because
Additional side yard
it
setbacks.
included the area of the deck as part of the building coverage. That's since been,
Removed.
yeah, the ordinance has been altered. Well, the
Oh.
interpretation of the ordinance has been altered.
Okay.
And the other one is the front setback. We had a variance because the dormer violated the 40-foot front setback. We no longer have a 40-foot setback except in sort of a nuke street with nothing on it. So, and the new ordinance refers to the average of 3 properties on either side of the subject property.
So remaining is the FAR and this unusual
Height to side yard.
I decide, okay, all right, so what's online is not up to date.
So according to my calculations, it's 30 feet tall, correct?
Yes.
So he would be required to have 11.96 feet. He only has 11.02. So your variance is 0.9,
.994.
right? That's what you're showing? You're asking for 0.92 feet of variance.
92 or 94?
Actually, it's 1.72 exactly.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's 0.3. Okay. So it's a 0.92 variance relief. He's required to have 10.10. He's required to have 0.3.
I get back to 10.10 at
Wait, no.
6 feet below the roof.
Mr. Singer, hold on.
Yeah.
So for the board to appropriately consider your application and variance request, we need to lock in on what the deviation is. So Ms. Davitt was in the process of helping you
Okay,
clarify, and it's not easy when we haven't gotten these plans until tonight.
Yeah.
understood.
Mr. Singer, we're still on questions, right?
Yeah, sure.
Just having difficulty with your columns on your plan, on the upper right side, the bulk columns. You have existing, original, proposed, and standard.
So the standard is what's required by code.
Standards are required by code. Okay, what you're proposing, I grab. What's original is what the original house was? And
That
what's the difference
was
between that and existing?
The first application.
Sorry. Okay, so the original was the
The-
first application.
Yeah, which was a first
Okay.
application and the last one that the board heard.
Okay.
So I think
So the
you-
required, sorry, Gary.
Finish up.
So the required setback is 11.39 side yard setback, right? Under 18 feet.
Well, that's what we're trying to.
Yeah, okay.
It's not, the existing building is 10 setback, but you're required to be 11.39, correct?
11.8 now.
11.8, so it's an existing non-conformance?
No.
No, because the
Second
roof
floor
is
is
currently
The other way.
at 26 feet.
Right, so he's raising it, which
So,
causes.
so because we changed the pitch of the roof to match the other roofs on, or get close to the other roofs on town, the house got larger, taller. The bridge got higher.
So I think you had said you think that the proposed design that you're now here with tonight is more consistent with the neighborhood.
Yes.
Are there any other houses in the neighborhood that have third floor or third floor dormers or anything like that?
Well, they all have attics. And they're all
At that,
about that height.
okay. No, any dormers or no?
This might actually simplify things. I do have a package that has the calculations for this,
Calculations for what?
for this scheme.
Oh.
It also has,
No, I got it.
well, you can answer.
Wait, what do you, let's see what you're, because it's, the problem, Mr. Singer, as you can probably imagine, is it's very difficult.
I am confusing all of you.
Well, it's not just confusing everyone, but it's for the board members and Ms. Davitt to see for the first time all these new calculations and requests for relief. Now, we're implementing some relief and showing new elevations. So
Had these materialized earlier, I would have gotten them to the board like the last set, but
right, so before we hand these out, under right side setback greater than 18 feet. What you have here, existing 10.10, Is that accurate?
10.10 is the setback now, yes.
Okay. Original, based on what Joseph just asked you, that's what you originally proposed.
That's the existing side of the house. It's got an existing side yard setback of 1.1.
So is existing and original the same? It's not.
How could the standard be higher than the proposed?
The existing and the original is existing, yeah. And
Just before we go through this, can I just get an answer to my question? Are there any other houses on the street that have dormers or third floor windows on that street?
yes, yes.
But there's no third floor on this, is there?
There is no third floor.
It's an attic with dormers.
It's an attic with dormers,
And why did you make the ceiling higher, the roof higher?
basically because these were just kind of, they look like shacks.
They look like shacks.
They're small, the massing's not consistent with the rest of the street. They look like
What's they?
Un-
Is
the roofs.
No, we don't know yet.
the roofs look- So you felt like for aesthetic reasons?
For
you needed to
aesthetic
make it
reasons, they-
Taller?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Really good question, guys.
So there is one set, in that package, there's a set of calculations that show the,
Wait, we haven't done it, hold on.
all right.
Let's just take a step back.
Mhm.
Okay? So, Mr. Singer, you've given us, before we mark it, so we're clear here, you've given us a 3-page document, right?
Yes.
Okay, you wanna mark it?
Sure.
Okay, so if you wanna mark it, let's mark it, we're now up to A4. And is this something that you prepared yourself?
Some of it were prepared by the planner, some of it was prepared by me. The calculation sheet I did, and the last sheet, this came from Google Earth. It's the height at the base of each house on the street, the height of the ridge, the height of the eaves, and the distance between the ridge and the eaves.
So we're gonna mark this as A4, we're gonna mark it with today's date of December 18th.
Yep.
Okay, and this is a 3-page set of relevant data calculations, right?
Mhm.
So why don't you explain to the board what this is, what each page is, and what's the relevancy to this application?
The first page is a planner, the study by the planner of the houses on the street that he's gonna discuss. The second page is
Okay, wait, hold on a second. So the lot comparison table on page 1, the planner, Mr. Flynn, is going to go over that, and that is gonna go to your FAR proofs, I assume.
that is gonna go to the FAR proofs.
Okay?
Yes.
Let's move on to page 2.
Page 2 is the zoning calculations.
Who prepared this?
I did.
Okay.
So in terms of, let's look down first. It says there's 2 calculations for gross area.
Yes.
And you shaded those that as in, no, it doesn't conform,
Right.
right? Is that still the case today?
So he was right.
That is still the case today.
Okay. So when you say gross area still doesn't conform, what does that mean in relation to this application?
We're at 39.52% of lot cover, of the lot area, and we're only allowed to be 36%.
So you need a variance.
For 211 square feet, yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
A variance for 211 square feet.
Where does it say 211 square feet?
You subtract the,
You're looking for 3.52% variance, which equals 211 square feet
yes.
from standard. Original on this chart is what you proposed that we're no longer considering, correct? So we can wipe that column out.
You can wipe that column out.
Super. Next, let's jump up to the right side setback thing, okay? Over 18 feet. The standard is not 11.81.
The standard is 11.81 at
Based on
30
your height.
feet.
But it's
But
not
your
30
house
feet
is
tall. Your
not
house is
30
not 30 feet tall. It says it's 30.69.
Right.
So that,
Oh, 30.69.
right,
Okay.
so based on
Anyway, that number is based on 30
you come up with 11.8 required at 30 feet tall.
at the 30.69.
At 18 feet tall, you're required to be 8 feet
Right.
off the property line.
So, okay,
Which you
so,
are.
so what this is trying to say is that the standard at the height of the building is 11.81 feet. And the building is actually 10 foot 10.
It starts at 10 feet, 10.10, and it goes.
And it doesn't
up to
change. It
11
goes
point-
straight up at
right.
10.10. But the required setback goes from 8 feet to, in this case, 11.81.
So it's,
So that's this crossing point.
And your height, let's just go over that real quick again. Your building height, you have the standard is 32. And you're looking for 30.69, correct?
Yeah, but I'm not looking for it. That's
he's
of
not
right.
looking for a variance for that.
No, I'm trying to, because that's what your right side setback is calculated off of.
Right.
Right.
It's kind of an important number.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I think I
Could have been really handy if you gave us that first, but
I kind of wanted to, but.
getting solved stuff. And then this last page, what's that? Okay.
All right, so the last page is, these numbers came from Google Earth. And they are the low point around the building for ground, the eave height at the edge of the roof. I mean, the ridge height, the eave height at the edge of the roof, the ridge height in the middle of the roof, and the distance between the horizontal distance between the ridge and the eave. Then the X in 12 column is the slope of the roof. So the first number would be 8.3 and 12. The bold one, which is us, is 5.25 and 12. And then the height of the building is the difference between the ridge height and the ground height.
Right. What you're showing is 28.25?
That's the current average. Current average, not the, we're 26 feet high now.
Currently, yeah.
Currently.
Okay.
And the 5.25 is the current slope. Proposed slope is 7.
Okay.
Just sticking with that last page, I'm sorry, the ground, ridge, and eave, those are elevation heights?
Those are the elevation heights of the ridge, the eave.
From Google Earth?
From Google Earth.
Is there a plus minus?
It is a 1 foot increment.
Okay.
As a 1 foot increment, it's not bad, but that's not terribly accurate. But it does give you a relative scale of things.
So this is for these are for the houses around.
This is that entire side of the street.
Okay.
And that's, ground is 169 feet above sea level, is that what they're saying? Is that how it's calculated?
It is Google Earth datum. I don't know. Do you know what it? No.
So it's just a mythical number then.
It's
So
you can't.
theoretically should be height over sea level.
that's what I'm guessing, 169 is about what
Yeah.
Because I think that for purposes of the record, certainly Mr. Flynn will testify as to the first page of A4. Mr. Singer testified as to the second page of A4. And
We make a paper airplane
Out of the page 3.
I didn't say that.
There we go. Okay.
Disregard page 3.
The relative numbers are pretty consistent. They're just approximate. I mean, they're not
All right.
done to decimal points.
Any other questions for Mr. Singer? Anything else for us, Mr. Singer?
No, I think I've tortured you guys enough.
Any questions from the audience for Mr. Singer? All right. Mr. Flynn, you next, or?
What's that?
Yeah.
Okay. So just by way of quick background, we're looking at block 1804, lot 13. It's a lot area of about 6,000 square feet. We're in the R6 zone where an FAR maximum of 36% is required here or permitted here. And we're proposing 39.51%. And I'll get back to that setback variance in just a second. I think we all might need a break from that. Basically, we're talking about an increase or an additional FAR, like our architect mentioned, of 211 square feet. Basically, the prevailing case law for an FAR variance is the Randolph Town Center case, and the essence of that test is whether the site itself can accommodate the proposed increase in FAR. I'll come back to that in just a second. I think I'll start off with the positive criteria. In terms of neighborhood compatibility, I guess it's sheet 1 on that packet that shows other properties on this street, either on this block with frontage on the street or across the street with frontage on this street that have an FAR that's actually greater than what's being proposed this evening. And I think the number was there's 6 other houses on this street, either on our block or the block right across the street there, with higher FAR. And I can tell you that 17 Claremont was approved as recently as 2020 for an FAR of 39.7%. So all of these properties that you see highlighted there are, like I said, relatively close to the subject site. I have it mapped here. One of those properties, lot 15, is actually 2 doors down. If you're facing the property, that would be 2 doors to the right. Also, right across the street, lot 6 and lot 5, I would say those 3 properties are very close to the site in question. And then those other 3 are relatively close as well. Just to give the board some background in terms of the prevailing FARs in the neighborhood. Like I said, the Randolph Town Center case does establish that the FAR variance is a site-specific test. But again, I think that we can and should look at neighborhood compatibility in terms of whether this home will stand out in the context of the neighborhood. But again, that goes into that negative criteria. Just in terms of positive criteria, this is home improvement that'll add value and quality to the property, which in turn adds value and quality to the area as a whole. The project provides a better living environment for a growing family that wants to stay in Millburn. Conceivably, this isn't the only family that has 4 children. There's plenty of other families that have a similar living arrangement, and this will bring that house up to par for these types of families. The building appearance will be attractive and in keeping with the neighborhood. Currently, there's actually a patio area in that area, that right side area, that's right on the lot line. This application proposes to remove that patio area and push it behind the building where it won't be, I would say, infringing on the neighbor's use of their property. Again, we're talking about 211 square feet, which I would say is tasteful and modest, especially when we look at the negative criteria. But again, I'm going to get to that in just a second. All of the above promotes purposes of the municipal land use law, including purpose A, promotion of the general welfare, purpose G, variety of uses in appropriate locations, purpose M, efficient use of land, and purpose I, desirable visual environment. Like I said, the flip side to that is the negative criteria, so no substantial detriment to the public or to the zone. Like I said, the heart of the D4 FAR variance test is whether the site itself can accommodate the increase in FAR. And I think really that's shown by the fact that in terms of zone conformance, we comply with the left side setback, we comply with the combined side setbacks, we comply with the rear setback, we comply with the standard called unoccupied rear yard, we comply with building coverage, lot coverage. We're actually about 10% under in terms of lot coverage. We just went through, we're compliant in terms of building height. And finally, front yard pavement. So all of that, I would say, speaks to the project from a mass and scale perspective, despite the fact that we're requesting 211 additional square feet of floor area. We are not requesting any additional bulk relief, aside from the one side setback that we just went through, which is actually an extension of the existing side setback. So by virtue of that substantial bulk compliance, I think the proposed building will not stand out in the context of the area. It's not going to stand out in the context of the zone plan. Really what we see from the street is, I would say, building height. We see the percentage of the lot that's covered, which in this case is the coverage requirements. We see building to building separation, which is the setback requirements. So again, I don't think that the proposed FAR is going to result in a building that's going to stand out in the context of the neighborhood. Just to go through the C variance, I think I'll just suffice it to say that 11.81 feet is required, and that's on, I guess I would say, a graduated scale from the top down to 18 feet. And for that entire scale, we are within 2 feet of that required setback. We went through the details of that. I'm not going to go there again unless you need me to. But again, that setback is actually existing today. We're not actually getting any closer to the property line. It's really just a result of bringing the building up a little bit higher, still in conformance with building height. But again, to the extent that the intent of a setback variance or requirement is to limit the distance to our neighboring property, the proposed application is not actually getting any closer to that lot line. So in terms of the planning rationale for that C variance, I think there is an essence of C1 hardship test, whereby the relief relates to an existing building. There is a case law, it's known as the Harleo case, where the court found what I would say a similar basis for relief for a vertical extension of an existing building. In other words, not bringing that building closer to the setback line, but just building up what is there today. But I would say that we also do have an element of the C2 balancing test, whereby all of those benefits that I went through for the FAR variance carry forth, again, getting rid of that patio that's on this side, moving it behind the building, and overall resulting in a building that I would say is in keeping with the rest of the buildings in the area. And that, again, is on sheet 1 of, I guess, exhibit A4. So with that, I think with all of that on the record, this is an appropriate application despite the FAR variance. We are talking about 211 square feet, but again, we have evidence here that that floor area, both in terms of a ratio and in terms of a hard number, is in keeping with the other homes in the area. So with that, unless there's any questions, that's all I have.
So for the benefit of the record, where'd you get your data for the lot comparison table?
Yeah, those are from property record cards. Yep.
What about the data that's missing for the recently approved in terms of first floor, second floor, and garage?
For the 17 Claremont?
Yeah.
That was from the resolution.
But I'm saying, did you look at the plans to see what the first floor, second floor, and garage were? I'm saying for comparison purposes.
You're missing that data.
Oh, okay, yeah, so that data comes from the property record, I'm sorry, we gave you all. That data comes from the property record card, and it's not up to date for that property. That's why it's missing.
Any questions for Mr. Flynn? Anyone in the audience have questions for Mr. Flynn? Anyone in the audience have comments?
Thanks.
Okay.
Oh, I guess I did have.
Any other testimony from the applicant or his professionals? Then I'll close the public portion on this here. Thoughts?
I'll go first.
Go.
Well, we looked at this in April. I think for me, the big thing was when we drive into the neighborhood, it was, what they were planning was a massing in the front. That was my understanding. That was what I thought. And I'm looking at the plans, all three versions of it, and except for the middle one, because that, we threw that out because it toned it way down, and we went back essentially to the original plan. With the only difference being, instead of a big front shed dormer, we now have two smaller dormers. I still get the impression of it being massing, at least from the street line. That plus the fact that, you know, I'd like to have this beforehand. We spend my Sundays the day before going and driving and looking at it, and not, you know, we play with the numbers at home. Not having it here, or only getting it here at the moment, it's like studying for, you know, my con law exam. So that kind of threw me at it. Those are my initial thoughts.
I would agree, this is an unusual application to sit here and try to digest it for the first time. And we certainly have had more than enough time since the first time we saw this application till now to have a really nice concrete plan. I still am not a big fan of the massing either. You know, when you get to these 6,000 square foot lots and you see these deviations, FAR deviations really show up. And when you look at this, it's evident. And my concern is when you see these built and you drive past them, you almost can tell which ones have the FAR variations. And I still look at this as saying it's just big. So, and I'm not in the camp that, you know, from a C2 perspective, that this lot can handle the massing. But I reserve my opinion at this point to adjudicate the case as affirmative or not, but I would like to hear what anyone else has to say.
You said C2, you meant the D4.
Sorry, I'm sorry, D4, sorry.
I'll go. I agree with everything that's been said so far. If I took down my notes, well, it looked like we went from 28 to 30, so we're actually increasing a little instead of going back. I knew you would decrease some things, but in terms of the massing for the neighborhood, it is a modest house to begin with. That's honest, and the neighborhood does have a few houses that I think could approach that. I'm mostly spinning because I didn't get this in advance to drive around and really look at the plans in front of me and look at the rest of the houses to compare, so I feel like it's a little unfair to us. So I don't know, I'd feel better if I'd had this in front of me and all of the numbers so I could really make a coherent decision. Honestly.
I think it's better than it was. I think the two dormers are better than the one big dormer, but I also do think it still looks big from the front.
Out of courtesy of the professionals, what would you like to do? Would you like us to vote?
Two things.
Can I have a motion to open the hearing to vote?
Motion to open.
Second. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
One is, as far as these two dormers go, we can stipulate that we'd like to remove them. I don't think they do anything for the plan. And if that changes anybody's opinion, that's great.
Does that do anything to the FAR? No, not really.
No, this
Not
is,
really,
it's
it's
an
just a matter
enact.
of visual. And how
Yeah,
about
they
the
were there to
aesthetic
give a
reasons?
little detail to the house, but they're not necessary. A lot of the other houses on the block don't have it. That's fine.
Since we're open.
Yes.
So I'm still sort of struck by the height of that roof, which is, to me, it looks like the same height as the second story. Are there any other houses in the neighborhood too? This is a very, very specific question that have that look, that very tall roof, vertical roof?
That very
Roof
tall
line?
vertical roof is the,
You said there's no third floor, so you said the height was really just,
that would be the lowest slope roof on the street still.
the angle and the height, the distance from the bottom of the roof to the top of the roof is still the lowest?
This is close to 7 even. And all the rest of the houses are higher than that.
So you're saying the high point in the attic is 7 feet? So what is it?
The high point in the attic is probably closer to 9.
What's the height of
Oh,
the second
9.
floor?
The height of the second floor is 8 feet.
All right, so it looks, yeah, because it looks taller than the second. floor.
But that's not
Okay.
None of
uncommon.
this contributes to FAR.
Yeah.
None of this contributes to
Right,
FAR.
so it does just design and mass.
Right, it does go to massing.
It does go to
It goes to massing, but, that's not contributing to FAR up there, so.
Either, that's right.
So even if you eliminated it, the FAR is still the FAR. So
Go ahead.
what are your thoughts? I mean, at the end of the day here, I think you smell what's being cooked. Do you want to take some time to actually present us with, so we can actually see what you're doing? I mean, if you want to eliminate the dormers, eliminate the dormers. I mean, you hear the board's comments.
Yes.
They're not comfortable making a decision based on seeing it from over there.
Can I make one?
Over there,
Objection.
meaning that they weren't,
Right,
not handed out, we
right.
didn't get it
We
before the
physically
hearing.
get the package.
I mean, you recommended removing the dormers. To tell you the truth, the dormers look good. From my point of
think
view,
so.
from my opinion, that whole high sloping, very tall 9-foot roof, 9-foot interior, that's the massing. I mean, actually the dormers break that up. Actually, I agree with you on that, but it's still big.
Look, that really speaks to your architectural design, because, at the end of the day, your height complies, but without your triangle, that's
Right.
it. So like somehow if you shifted that thing over the center, made it super ugly looking, you could make it comply. But that's probably not gonna look any good.
Well, I mean, the move to make it comply is to take this roof and make a peak here.
Right.
Because then we're out of that side yard setback. And then unfortunately, my next move is that we can bring that shape out to the front of the house as of right.
As long as you don't enter your FAR.
As long as we don't, but then.
Then you have to trim the back.
Well, you end up not having to deal with the first floor, so you gain whatever is in the garage and the portico.
Right.
So it reduces the requirement a little bit.
Balls to your court, what do you wanna do? You want us to vote or not? That's all I can offer you at this point.
What do you want to do? What? Okay, there's no rush, then we'll come back.
So,
Well, we don't have a 2024 calendar yet.
right, we haven't
So
adopted
we'd have
that.
to carry it to the first meeting of January, which we do have, in order to schedule it for.
Right.
A further date.
So what's that date?
Yeah, that'll be. in the
Most
committee.
likely January 22nd.
No, what's the first
Oh, I'm
date
sorry,
for
January
scheduling?
8th is our first meeting.
So we would have to determine that when we can next hear you on the 8th of January, okay? As we have not adopted a schedule yet, okay? So here's what
Would you be interested in doing this based on seeing the plans? Making the approval contingent on?
No, we can't do that. Because it has to be, we have to have the public, it has to be able to question it, I mean, you can't do that. So what we need to do is to see a nice clean set of plans, with the data that you're requesting, not the first, the second, the third, a clean application.
And if I could, I would suggest those 4 pictures that you have up there, they need to be, I would suggest that you put each one of those on its own sheet of paper so that.
You're
because they're
talking
very
about the
small.
elevations or?
Correct, where you show the actual deviation, because it's very small, number one, and then to be looking at it, unfortunately, we didn't have it. So it just makes it, I think, in my opinion, a little more difficult to.
Understand.
And proper attachment E and F and everything, so we know exactly what you're looking for. So on the 8th, we'll determine the date, okay? And go from there. Gross area, yeah.
Well, I don't mind getting rid of it.
So then, should they need to be present on the 8th? Should they have to renotice then?
No,
we're just gonna
carry it to schedule it, we'll announce it at that time, so they don't even, they don't have to be here. I can tell them what it
You let them
is.
know. All right, so then, for the sake of those in public and along at home, we will move this case to the 8th of January, and at that point, then determine when it'll be heard further.
Yeah, and in the meantime, I could, Ron, Priscilla at least, would be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, to your benefit, we may be also be able to get another, at least one more member. We are losing one, but we'll be able to pick up one. And then Chandra, can get up to speed too.
Yeah, it gets right to it.
Yeah, Chandra can get up to speed. So,
I'm sorry, my eyes closed.
so that's that.
We have a Sugar have watched TV.
But, so in that case, we'll see you in the new year, gentlemen. Any other comment from the audience regarding anything that has not been on the agenda this evening? Are you really related to this case, or do you have any comment, Randy?
I kind of try to understand what the board is looking for, and I really want to add this case, to be honest.
Okay, well, so, at this point, okay.
Yeah.
Very well. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Real quick, as I mentioned, Ashley will be leaving the board. I want to thank her for her service.
Thank you very much. Getting to know everyone and being here.
And there has been some recommendations to the TC for replacement, so we should be able to bring someone in pretty quick, which is good, so we'll have a full board, so I'm happy to see that. There's been a strong number of applicants over the last few weeks. And so I'm looking forward to TC making a decision and adding some. Other than that, I wish everyone a happy holiday season and a happy new year. I look forward to seeing everyone back January 8th. And any other comments, questions? In that case, I have a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Enjoy, folks.
Happy
You
holidays.
too as well.
Happy holidays.
I'm staying right there.
You are the alternate?
I want to.
Yeah.
I'm here.